So hello everyone. It's wonderful to see you all here this afternoon for this talk. And in this talk I'm going to try to understand a little bit what it is to live in a collectivity and what are some of the elements that can help bring about a more harmonious, fraternal way of living together. And if you've been watching the news and listening to the radio for the last few weeks, last few months, you can see that there's been a lot of conflicts in the world and potential conflicts that may emerge. And you may be asking yourself, well, have we not, as humanity, have we not learned from the past? Are we going to repeat the same mistakes again? And I'm hopeful that we're going to learn from our previous conflicts, because when we come together as a collectivity, as a group of people, we're always going to have conflicts. Conflicts are the normal part of coming together as a group. They're also a normal part of growing up through the different stages of life. So it's normal and natural to have conflicts. What's not normal or natural is not to resolve our conflicts, to avoid our conflicts, to ignore them, to sweep them under the carpet, as the expression goes. So that's not normal and natural. And what ended up being something very small grows and grows and grows, and then it becomes very difficult to resolve. But when we resolve our conflicts, we become stronger. And we're able to deal with future conflicts better, because we've developed some strength inside of ourselves to be able to deal with them. And it also helps us build the future together better. And the title of this talk is Independence and Solidarity, which gives some insights how to resolve our conflicts in a peaceful and assertive way without resorting to violence. And the concept of independence and solidarity, they're very much interconnected. They represent a dynamic tension between two principles that are often seen as opposites. But in fact, they're fundamentally connected. They're two behaviors that represent a single human aspiration. Independence is trying to become the best that we can be, and solidarity is to develop strength together as a collectivity. So solidarity is a network of people who come together for a common goal or for common ideals, and where everyone's individual moral strengths brings the strength of the whole better. And we've seen throughout humanity's history, we've been able to do this. We've been able to have independence and solidarity at the same time, not perfectly, but there's been models. For example, one example in ancient Greece was what the Greeks called the Acropolis. And the Acropolis the word means high city. And it was in Athens. For those who've been there, it's at the center of the city, or more or less. It's the high place. And it represents the ideal or the highest aspirations of the humanity. And there to represent symbolically their virtues, such as qualities or ideals as victory, wisdom, courage, and so on. So there was something there where everybody was elevated towards, individually and collectively. And this model we've seen it throughout humanity's history, that helped create a culture that helps bring out the best in the human being, in humanity. So what is independence? Well, when I refer to independence, it's not political independence, but it's more related to independence within inside ourselves. To become independent, that allows us to do what we need to do, so we can be an example for others. So that's the kind of independence I'm talking about. And so we're less impacted by the chaos and the distractions of our environment. And we can be easily swayed or distracted by our environment. So how do we become less impacted by our environment, the chaos and distractions? Because if we are distracted, if we are all over the place, it's very difficult to have a vision of where we want to go. Where do we want to bring others? How can we collectively contribute to the betterment of the collectivity? So, and if we observe ourselves, we can see that we tend to allow ourselves to be distracted. And there's lots of things to be distracted by today. I did an example of the second phone I could have taken. There's lots of distractions. Social media, there's social status, There's lots of things that distract us from who we are. They distract us outside of ourselves and don't allow us to become who we are. It's okay to have a distraction. It's okay. I'm not saying distractions are bad, but with everything, there's a measure. And this is not a new phenomenon. This is not because of new social media or something that's happened the last 5 or 10 years ago. No, this has been a challenge that humanity has had for a long time. And many philosophers have reflected, how can we create independence so we can, independence of thought, so we can think for ourselves and by ourselves. So we can have more mental clarity to see where we want to go. The Greeks have a word for independence, inner independence, which is called autarky, and it means self-sufficiency. And what they mean by that is not to be individualistic, to only be concerned about oneself, but autarky or independence, it means that feeling we have of freedom of thought and decision-making that gives us a feeling of being in charge of our own destiny. We know where we want to go. We have a certain stability inside ourselves. So despite the natural adversity of life, we have a stability, just a certain calmness, a certain centeredness inside ourselves. How is autarky or independence developed inside ourselves? The Greeks have a word for it that'll help us understand. It's called virtue. We've all had experiences where our consciousness has told us what to do. Our inner voice has told us what to do. We have clarity inside what we need, what direction we need to go on. But sometimes we don't do it. Why? Because there's a disconnection between our consciousness and our actions, between our heart and our actions. And what can we do to build that connection inside? And so there's a connection between what we think, the way we feel, and the way we act. And we've noticed if we give in to that behavior of not listening to our inner voice over and over again, we tend to lose our strength. We lose our strength of character. And then we say to ourselves, what do we say to ourselves? We say, I can't do it. I'm not good enough. Someone else can do it, but I can't do it. Because we have allowed ourselves to not enter into that inner movement. And we lose self-confidence. So the Greeks would say to build that inner strength, which connects our consciousness and our actions and our heart, we need something, an inner strength to do that. And that inner strength is called virtue in ancient Greece. And different schools of philosophy all over the world have different words for it. But it's that same methodology that helps to connect us inside. When we act according to virtue, they're called qualities. And we all have qualities. All of us in this room have qualities, without a doubt. And qualities, what are qualities? Qualities are such things as courage, determination, perseverance, and courage. And these are strengths, these are powers that we have inside ourselves. But some of them are activated and some of them are more dormant. And what we're trying to do as a collectivity is to help each other to learn from our strengths. Because some people, their qualities are activated and some are not activated. So for example, some of us could be very courageous. So we have the quality of courage. Another person may be a bit more cowardly. It doesn't mean that they're a coward, it means they're lacking in courage. So they have something inside themselves that they can awaken. Some people may be shy, so they're lacking in self-confidence. It doesn't mean they are a shy person. No, you're lacking in self-confidence. We can overcome that. Because there's a great potential in a human being. We have great power and great strength inside of ourselves. But how do we awaken it? How do we awaken that inner strength? Today is January. What do people do in January? The beginning of January, where do people go? The gym. So they go to the gym to do what? They get strong. They build their muscles. They get strength. Well, for one reason. They get strength. They want to get strong. So how do we get strong inside? The strength of character. So we're more confident. We're more determined. We know what we want to do. How do we get stronger inside? We have to develop our qualities. Qualities. And these are, and what the name for that in philosophy is called ethics, stroke morality. So to become stronger inside, we develop morality and strength. And we can learn from others, as I said, to become stronger. So that's solidarity. Because each of us can help each other to become stronger. Isn't that fantastic? isn't it, as a methodology? But it's to know that and to see it. Nelson Mandela said something, as I'm reading a biography from him at the moment, and he said he always looked at the strength of each person he met. He always looked at the strength they had, not at the weakness, but their strength. And he said he always trusted the inner being of the human being. Doesn't mean he wasn't betrayed. It didn't mean he made mistakes. No, but he trusted them, and people recognized that in him. And he was able to connect with people in a very different way. And that's why he was such a fantastic leader. So once we're able to be who we are, we can be with others in a better, different way. It's a very different methodology. And once we have confidence inside ourselves, we have confidence with others. We can have confidence in others. Once we have trust inside ourselves, we can trust others. It's a very different perspective. So what is solidarity? Solidarity comes from the word, it means solid, firm, whole. It carries the meaning of strength. But it's strength that a group of people or individuals have that share something in common. And it's a strength that each individual brings to the group. And that's why independence is so important, because once we have that strength of character, then we're able to work better with others. Because people forgive us for our lackings, and we forgive people for their lackings. None of us are perfect. We can grow together. And in solidarity, we grow and learn from each other. I want to read out a parable to you that I think will help explain or give a different facet to solidarity. It's one of the books that the series of talks are based on. And it's called The Carpenter's Workshop. So I'll try to read it out as best I can. There was a strange meeting in the carpenter's workshop, where all the tools had assembled to settle their differences. At first, the hammer chaired the meeting, but those present called for his resignation. The reason? He made too much noise and spent too much time banging things. The hammer acknowledged his guilt, but asked for a screw to be expelled from the meeting. He had to be turned around so many times before he could do anything useful. The screw agreed to be removed, but in turn asked for the sandpaper to be expelled. He was very rough in the way he dealt with others and was caused of endless friction. The sandpaper agreed on condition that the tape measure should be expelled because he spent his time measuring others as if he was perfect. At that moment, the carpenter came in, stood in front of the tools and began his work, alternating using the hammer, the sandpaper, the tape measure and the screw. In the end, the piece of wood had become a beautiful piece of furniture. Once he had left the workshop, the meeting resumed its deliberations. The saw said, "Gentlemen, it has been shown that we all have faults, but the carpenters work with our qualities, and this is what makes us wonderful. So let us stop thinking about our weaknesses and focus on our virtues." The meeting then found that the hammer was strong, the screw joined things together and made them solid. The sandpaper smoothed out rough edges, and the tape measure was precise and accurate. They felt they were a team capable of producing beautiful furniture, and their difference became secondary. It's a fantastic parable. Parables and myths have a fantastic way of explaining, connecting things that the sometimes rational mind finds it difficult to interconnect things. I'm not going to explain too much about the parable because one of the questions for the dialogue is about solidarity. So we can use that as a fruit for thought or fruit for discussion. I just want to read one more passage from a French writer and philosopher called Saint-Exupéry. Have anybody heard of him? He wrote The Little Prince. Yes, I'm probably butchering the name. I'm not saying it properly, but he wrote The Little Prince. Fantastic writer. And he said something. He said, "A civilization must first be built in the hearts of the human being." For him, a civilization wasn't about rules, about procedures, but for him, it was building an inner state of consciousness so people can grasp something superior, something transcendent, and we're able to connect to it and then to be inspired and aspire to it. And this is what he said. "If you want to build a boat, Do not gather your men and women and give them orders. Explain every detail. Tell them where to find everything. If you want to build a boat, instill in the hearts of men and women the desire for the sea. If we want to resolve our conflicts in life, it's one of the ways that helps to build solidarity is to open our heart. Because we have a lot of knowledge, we have a lot of information, we have a lot of procedures, we have a huge amount of information. We have a library here full of information and knowledge. But if we don't open our hearts to be a little bit more kind and caring, compassionate, humble, then it's going to be very difficult for humanity to find solidarity. If we can open our hearts, we have something in common, and we start to practice these things I'm talking about this afternoon. As a group of people, we can have a huge impact in the world around us. Imagine all of us here today, we decided to open our hearts and decided to put this into practice. Imagine another few hundred people joined us, and we were an example of these values and ideals. And we demonstrated to others, through our example, what we can do in the world. Well, that example would be fantastic, because it demonstrates that things can change things. We can overcome our conflicts as a group of people, and things are possible. So, because we can't wait any longer, We can't be passive in the face of life. We can't sit on the sidelines of life. Life is short. Let's just do something heroic. Let's do something great with it, for ourselves and for others. So thank you for listening, and I wish you good practice.